All right, well, welcome everyone. And this is our second Breaking the Glass Ceiling event that we're having now virtually, of course, right now. We're super excited about this program. Each month we get to talk with an incredible, strong, amazing woman. So Janet, I hope that you are up for that task. And what's really nice about this Breaking the Glass Ceiling is it is real and authentic, and we get to hear from our guests about, their triumphs, their, failures, lessons learned, and even some advice that they have for us. So each guest is different, and so we're excited to always hear what they have to say. Each of these programs are recorded, so they will be on YouTube. The edited version usually takes about 3 days to get up on YouTube, but if you go to our YouTube page and like us, you will find all of our videos there. You will notice that your cameras and your microphone should be muted and off, and then at the end of the program, we'll let you all come back on so we can all see each other, and that just helps us with the recording process. You can ask questions, so there'll be a live Q&A, and Dr. Seabrook has said that she is open to any of your questions. So you can either put them in the chat if you're on Zoom, or if you're on our live, if you're watching us live on Facebook, just type it in there and we will get the questions right over to Dr. Seabrook. At the end, we're going to give you a short survey. This survey takes less than 30 seconds. So we really encourage you to just take 30 seconds and let us know how we did and other topics and stuff that you would like to see. And of course, we have our legal disclaimer that the views and opinions expressed during this program are those of the persons appearing in this program. Blah, 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 blah. There's a disclaimer. So welcome to NWIIWA. NWIIWA's really proud to put this on. NWIIWA is the Northwest Indiana Influential Women's Association, and we are the region's largest association of women that is looking for professional development, moving their careers forward, networking, leadership, and education, and we cover just a variety of different industries. And so when we work together, we really just bring our tribe together and lift each other up. It's just amazing. So if you need more information, just go to NWIIWA.org. I'd like to thank our partners that partner with us throughout the year. We have 2 elite partners, Franciscan Health and Ivy Tech. Our premier partner is Horizon Bank, and our diamond partner is Sage Popovich. For each Breaking the Glass Ceiling, we offer specific sponsors, and this one is Purdue University Northwest, and they are our hammer sponsor for Dr. Seabrook. And here's a quick 30 seconds introduction from Purdue, and then I promise you, we're getting right into Dr. Seabrook, so it's going to be quick. Here you go.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ashley Gerodimos, and I am the Executive Director for the PNW Alumni Community and University Strategic Events here at Purdue University Northwest. We are so excited to be a hammer sponsor for today's Breaking the Glass Ceiling event. Dr. Janet Seabrook is one of our distinguished alumnae, and we could not be more proud of her accomplishments. If you are a graduate of Purdue Northwest at any time, drop a note here in the comments to say hello to us. We would love you to be a part of our community. It is growing and thriving, and we have tons of events and advantages for you to take and participate in. Our links to the alumni website will be inside the chat area, but also for you to receive those updates on the fun events that we have that include family events, professional development, and many more great advantages. Please update your alumni profile, and that link is also available in the chat and on the alumni website. We hope you enjoyed today's presentation, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Okay, so with that, hey everyone, we heard you from our last Breaking the Glass Ceiling, and we are going to be getting right to our guest of honor right away. But of course, I need to introduce you to our fabulous moderators, Dr. Karen Bishop-Morris and Dr. Lori Feldman. They have done all the legwork to make this presentation happen. So Karen and Lori, it's now your floor. Thank you.
Awesome, and thank you, Andrea. We are going to equally be brief in introducing ourselves and get straight to our wonderful guest of honor today, Dr. Seabrook. So I wanted to, I'm Lori Feldman, and delighted to be here with you today. And I want to, before I introduce myself, tell you a bit about tiny 30 seconds about why breaking the glass ceiling and how, where this came from and why we're doing this. When we started this and why we're continuing to do this is to highlight women. It started as highlighting alumna of PNW, and now we are highlighting women much more broadly, although Dr. Seabrook is an alumna of PNW, and we are very proud of that. So we are showing and inspiring what women can do. And this program, we are delighted to tell you, has evolved with the partnership with NWIIWA, and we're delighted to continue to bring you more and more amazing women. So in introducing myself, I'll give you one sentence, and then we will get to Dr. Seabrook after Karen introduces herself. You can see who I am on the screen, but I'm also an impact creator. I'm a fierce nurturer of talent, and I'm a passionate advocate for women. Karen?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Lori. Thank you, Andrea and NWIIWA. Thank you, Dr. Seabrook. So as Lori said, you can see my sort of official title on the screen, but I am Karen Bishop Morris, and I am a storyteller and a fundraising strategist and an advocate and promoter of public health and the humanities. And I am thrilled to have the honor, really, and pleasure today of introducing our speaker and our guest, Dr. Janet Seabrook. Dr. Janet Seabrook is a hometown heroine. She graduated from Gary Roosevelt High School and earned her undergraduate and medical degrees from historically Black colleges and universities. She completed her residency at Gary Methodist and specializes in family medicine. In 1996, the U.S. Public Health Service named Gary, Indiana as, quote, the neediest U.S. city without a community health center. In true Dr. Seabrook fashion, she matched her skills with the community's needs, and as they say, the rest is history. Dr. Seabrook's work in the Gary community is nothing short of remarkable and inspiring, and we're so pleased that you'll get to hear about it today. Today, Dr. Seabrook leads 100+ employees across 6 locations throughout Northwest Indiana, including a mobile medical unit and bus transport to move patients to and from appointments. She is also married to a physician, Dr. Augustine Iza, and together they are the proud parents of a son and daughter. Please join us in welcoming Dr. Janet Seabrook. Good morning, Dr. Seabrook.
Good morning. Thank you so much for that wonderful and beautiful introduction. I certainly appreciate it. And I just want to say to you and Lori both, you know, the conversations, the dialogue that we have had over these past, several weeks have just been a good thing for me, kind of helped lift up my spirit. So, we had some girl talk, we had some business talk, we got things done, and I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that and for being so generous with your time and talent as you are in the community. And I know that I speak for Lori when I say we've just really been energized and motivated as well by being able to spend some time with you over the last few weeks. So as promised, I want to get right into it, and I want to talk a little bit about attitudes around COVID, particularly because the coronavirus and perceptions about it differ significantly according to race. And the African American community is no exception to that. This information comes from a recent Pew Research Center study. Although 71% of Black Americans know someone who has been hospitalized or died from the coronavirus, and although we know that African Americans are almost 3 times more likely to die from COVID as our white counterparts, what we want to know from you today as a physician and as a CEO of Community HealthNet, what are the factors that contribute to the increased risk of COVID-19 in communities of color? Maybe you can speak to us a bit about the factors and also some of the barriers or challenges in the African American community.
So when you think about particularly communities of color, we have a high rate of hypertension, diabetes, and those chronic diseases, asthma, COPD, that have a tendency to make us more likely to fall to an acute or an infectious disease and have to be hospitalized for it. And so what happens is, because there is such need, there's a great need in the community, particularly in our community, for healthcare services. And that includes not only primary medical services, but behavioral health, because people are really suffering right now from depression and other behavioral health illnesses. But think about dental and optometry as well. People are really pushing off or putting off services because of the fear of COVID-19. So it's very important to understand that our community really needs to be vaccinated in order to make sure that we are not hospitalized in great numbers and have morbidity and mortality due to COVID-19.
And you shared with us a little bit in one of our conversations about some of the struggles that you've had in securing the vaccines for seniors. Can you speak to that just a bit?
You know, it has been a little frustrating because of the shortages, but Community HealthNet recently received word that one of our sites was approved by the state. Our newest location on 35th and Martin Luther King will have the vaccine in 2 weeks. So we are ecstatic because our phones have been ringing off the hook. Our older patients want it, and we want to get it to them and give them the shot. Now, there has been some hesitancy in the age range of about 30 to 45. We're seeing some hesitancy, but the older citizens, they are really clamoring for this because they are scared, and I don't blame them. And so as soon as we're able to be trained on it in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be giving that vaccine. But we have to follow the state's guidelines. So whatever the state's guidelines are, Community HealthNet has to follow the guidelines or risk not being able or losing that site. And we don't want to do that because we worked too hard to get it.
Oh, well, first of all, that's fantastic news for the community and for your network. So congratulations on securing those much needed vaccines. But you said something that I really want to kind of drill down on a little bit about this hesitancy or reluctance in certain communities. And in our community in particular, it boils down to trust, right?
Yes.
So we know that, the thing that surfaces most often is the Tuskegee experiment, right? Most people know about, the sort of ethics violations of not treating Black men with syphilis at the end of the 60s, early 70s, and the trauma. But folks may not be as tuned in to some of the other, there's just a record of kind of abuses in the African-American community. In 2018, I think it was, there was a statue in Central Park that finally came down that memorialized J. Marion Sims, who basically practiced on African-American gynecologic patients without anesthesia. We know today in women's prisons, a lot of African-American women are being sterilized without consent. We know from the story of Henrietta Lacks, how her cells were harvested after she passed away from cervical cancer. And those, without consent, those cells have been used to, spurn some of the biggest innovations in health and medicine in the 20th century.
The
question is,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Dr. Seabrook.
No, it really brought things home to me. Imagine being a student. I've loved biology since I was a little girl. And so you're looking at slides. I'm in, high school and then going off to college and doing pathology and the different courses. And my slide box has HeLa on it.
Right.
And never put the connection together until I was older and read the book. And I'm like, my God, I've been looking at HeLa cells all of my life, all of my adult life for the most part. It blew my mind.
I'm so happy that you said that. And thanks for entertaining my really long introduction to this question, which is, what does someone like you say to folks who are reluctant and who are hesitant? What do you say to them about taking the vaccine?
So I talk to people about the risk and benefit and asking them to take a look at the risk of catching COVID, being in the hospital, potentially being placed on a ventilator, and potentially dying from COVID. versus the benefit of being protected, not only yourself, but other family members, if you can encourage them to get it as well. So I ask people to take a long, hard look, and many of them do have chronic diseases. And so when they put that risk benefit, it's just like anything, even in business, you put together risk benefit analysis as to how is this going to help me or how is this going to hurt me?
Thank you so much. We just needed to have that conversation, right? So now that we've got that over with.
And I just want to stress a little bit too, that many of the gynecological procedures that are done today were advances from those procedures that happened, as you said, without consent and without anesthesia on enslaved women.
Thank you. Thank you. It's really important for people to know that, but to hear it from you, I think has huge impact. So thank you for sharing those experiences.
Oh, you're welcome.
Before we move on to our next segment, I want to take a moment to thank again the sponsors of today's program, and then I promise we will get back to our programming ASAP, but because of their generosity, we were able to bring this to you. So again, our Hammer sponsor today is Purdue University Northwest. The elite sponsors are Franciscan Health and Ivy Tech Community College. The premier partner is Horizon Bank, and the diamond partner is Sage Popovich. So we thank them all deeply for their continued contribution to this program and other NWIIWA programs. So Dr. Seabrook, I know that one of the things people tuned in to hear is you as an entrepreneur, right? You're not only a scientist and a mother and a wife, but you're an entrepreneur. And so maybe you can share a story with us about how, we talked about this a bit briefly, about how entrepreneurship became a goal for you, or if it was ever that much forethought. Did it become a goal or did it happen? How did you know when you had the right idea?
So, and I expressed this to you before, I did not know I was being an entrepreneur. I just knew that there was something that needed to be done. When the report came out, I was in my last year of residency at Methodist Hospital when that 1996 report came out. So I actually started work on this in my last year of residency. And I tell people a little selfishly that I had a National Health Service Corps scholarship that paid for my last 2 years of medical school, thank God. So when you receive that scholarship, you must go to an underserved area. So I was assigned to a fairly qualified health center in Chicago. So I had to drive. When I graduated from residency, I had to drive to Chicago. It was on the south side, so it's not that bad. It was still a drive to Chicago. And continue working with the health department. I was on the Gary Health Department board, continued working with them, wrote a series of pilot grants to the Indiana State Department of Health, where we got the first funding, we received the first funding. And after working at that federally qualified health center in Chicago for about a year and a half, knowing that I had to do 4 years to pay it back, so to speak, I threw everything out the window and I said, you know what? I have to focus on this 100%. So if my time has to start over, it'll start over at Gary's federally qualified health center.
So what is the most important thing that you think drives women to be successful as an entrepreneur and allowed you to be as successful as you are? Because I know you've told me the story of how small you started, right? And maybe you can share that with the audience, but how small you started, and and Karen spotlighted for us how big your organization is and how many people in the community you're serving. So what does it take to do that, Janet?
And so with me, and you're right, we did start small. I started in a trailer off of 47th Avenue behind the church in Glen Park here. And from there, it was myself, a receptionist, and a medical assistant. And this double wide, so to speak, had a waiting room. It had a little office for me, and it had 3 or 4 exam rooms. And so we were able to start seeing patients there after we received the state funding. So we started very small. Fairly qualified health centers have to have a board. 51% of those board members must be users or patients of the health center. And so as time went on and we began to grow, and we moved out of that location after 2 years, we started to get more patients. We were able to bring on a few more staff members. But one of my board members, she at that time was the board chair. And she pulled me to the side one day and she said, Dr. Seabrook, I need for you to get out of the office. I need for you to get out, get the word out about the health center, but also get out there and meet people. Let people know Dr. Seabrook. Don't let people speak for you on your behalf. Go out there and show people who you really are.
So you had a tribe behind you who, and I think you told me and Karen this, but maybe you can share this story. So it's not just that this board member told you that you needed to do it. She did more than that, right? She gave you an unbelievable gift, at least in my mind. Can you share that?
So what this board member did was reach out to everyone in her world. And she said, we're gonna find a way that Dr. Seabrook can get out of the office. So, you know, I know doctors, I know nurses, you're gonna come in, I need you to cover for her, you know, 1 or 2 days a week so she can go to meetings in Indianapolis, she can participate in committees and things that were going on in Lake County. So without that, you know, without her network and without that, you know, I have your back sort of feeling, being the board president, it really meant a lot to me. And it gave me the ability to get out into the community and talk about the work that was being done at Community HealthNet.
Right.
So I want to jump in here because I'll tell you, just me listening to this, and I know, you know, everyone is riveted by all of the advice and the exchange. But we promised Andrea and the Northwest Indiana influential women something raw and something real, and we want to deliver on this. So I know that this sounds, maybe to some, to me, it's awe-inspiring, maybe even almost unattainable to be able to accomplish what you've accomplished and what you've built and the way you're supporting not only the community, but your employees, which we'll talk about later. But I'm wondering, and actually, Dr. Seabrook, before we ask you this question, I'm going to put my partner in crime on the spot a little bit because she mentors a lot of young women in business. And I know that they come to her with this sort of thing too. And the question really is this, you know, it's not all peaches and cream. What are some of the mistakes or what are some of the things that you've had to overcome in order to get where you are? And so, Dr. Feldman, before I pose that to Dr. Seabrook, because I know you have some stories along this line, and I'm wondering if you'd be willing to share ways that you've overcome some challenges to get to where you are.
Absolutely, right? I mean, you know, it's sort of the Facebook problem. Nobody posts the bad things and everybody posts that they're, you know, the grass is greener on their side of the fence. And it's not always, right? That's the reality. And I've shared this story with a few people. My children are grown, they're out of graduate school, they're doing great, but there was a time, you know, there was a long time that I was a minivan driving soccer mom. And I relied very heavily on a woman who helped me care for my children. And one day, my oldest child maybe was 7, and I came home and she said to me, Lori, I'm taking another job and I'm leaving next week. And I had a minor heart attack. Not really, Dr. Seabrook, but had a minor heart, you know, my heart stopped for a second. And I didn't want to say anything in front of her, and I certainly didn't want to say anything in front of my children. So I got in my minivan and I drove to, at that time, the Dominick's, and I sat in the car and I sobbed because I didn't know what I was going to do. I had a week to find someone to take care of my children or not go to work because my children needed me and they were young but work needed me and I didn't know what I was going to do. And eventually I pulled it together and I asked for help, right? And I had a tribe of a few people who helped, but it was not sunshine and roses and peaches and cream. I was scared and I didn't know what I was going to do. And my husband is busy. But I learned from that. And the next person who came to help my family, we had a discussion about how much time you need to give me before you leave. So yeah, and I know this is not an uncommon story. So Karen, I hope that's what you wanted.
Sorry, you can pay me back later for putting you on the spot. But we toss it now to you, Dr. Seabrook, because so many women are confronting imposter syndrome and, you know, the broken rung and all these things. What challenges have you had to navigate and overcome, if you wouldn't mind?
And so I have a story similar to Lori's. I have two children. One is in my oldest daughter. She's in medical school now. She's in her second year at my alma mater, Meharry. And our son is at Purdue, the Lafayette campus, so in his second year. And they're both back in person, so that's a wonderful thing. I think that the biggest thing, because I did have that same experience, but I had my parents. My mom and my dad had my back. And my dad would do the runs to, you know, school and the pickups, and I would get there just in time for soccer practice or the basketball game or cheer practice or dance, whatever it was. But my parents really had my back. So without them, I don't know how far I would have gotten. Now my daughter, because she is the oldest, she came to the office a couple of times and she's participated in a couple of business meetings and, you know, this is how it goes. This is what mommy does. And, you know, we're going into an exam room, we're getting ready to say hi to a patient, and then you're going to sit out at the nurse's station until mommy gets finished, you know, seeing this patient. So you do what you have to do. You do what needs to be done to get something done. But let me go a little bit deeper. As you guys can see, I'm very passionate about what I do. And sometimes that passion, particularly in women, can be mistaken for anger. And sometimes you can get stuck with that label, angry woman or angry Black woman. And so a part of me, my board president at that time asking me and kind of pushing me and encouraging me to get out into the community, to literally, you know, participate in boards and go and speak to our representatives in Indianapolis and be on legislative committees, was to make sure that my passion did not get labeled. My passion for making sure and wanting affordable health care in Gary specifically did not get mistaken or turned into angry woman syndrome.
Okay, that's huge. So if folks are just, you know, tuning in or joining, I just want to recap some of what you've said, because it's so important. This idea of controlling one's own narrative, I think, is huge. I also think it's really important that we talk about, because this you exemplify and exude, Dr. Seabrook. It can't just be about the money, this passion. There has to be some deeper commitment. And in fact, there's even, and your connection to the community is that. In fact, GEMS, I think, is the organization, a global entrepreneurship report, has actually studied this, that you can't just pay people a bunch of money, or you can't just, you know, start a successful business. If there's not some intrinsic, you know, connection, it just doesn't work. And it reminds me of, folks may have heard this, that Roz Brewer, just to piggyback on Lori's comment about having a tribe, Roz Brewer, some folks may know that March 2021, I think, she takes over as the CEO of Walgreens, and she will be the only Black female CEO in the Fortune 500. And so again, we see these examples and exemplars and we think like, oh, wow, she's dynamite. Well, you know what, everyone in this Zoom is dynamite. But what happened is there was a tribe, right? Her absolute mentorship and sponsorship from Melody Hobson, who is the board chair for Starbucks. Right now, Roz is the COO of Starbucks. But opening those doors and pathways, I mean, that's how growth happens. That's how women evolve and move along the pipeline to success. So, and we know that you're doing opening those doors and creating those pathways also. Okay, I want to finish up on this entrepreneurship conversation because I know that there are people listening who want to know, like, what do I do though? Like from the idea to like organizing the business to, can you help us understand like what are the steps that folks need to take to?
So, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, to fire
So,
away.
first of all, what are you passionate about? What are you passionate about? What is it that you want to accomplish? What people have a tendency to do is go into businesses blind. You have a passion about it. Now let's sit down and write it out. Put together a business plan. How are you going to make this sustainable? Is this a 1-year plan? It's a 5-year, 10-year plan. You need to strategize. And I think that you need to turn that passion, you have to put that passion down on paper and put a business plan together. Create not a personal account, but a business bank account. Keep your personal finances separate from that business account. So there are things that you need to do to, make sure that you aren't going to have any financial implications or tax implications by mingling or commingling of money. It's very important to keep those accounts separate. Make sure that you have some legal expertise, someone that you could call upon to review a contract or a lease agreement. And I'll share very briefly. I know someone very well that signed a lease agreement, not realizing that it was a 5-year lease agreement. It was a terrible location for the business that they were doing, and they moved out, but they still had to pay because they signed a 5-year lease without reading it very closely and looking at those terms. And if you're someone who is not very good as far as with reading contracts and going through all that legal language, find someone, negotiate a rate, review this contract for me. What are the things that need to be edited out, negotiated, and things like that? Never, ever sign a 5-year lease on a business that you're just starting. So those are some of the things that I would, caution people on. Also, are you forming a corporation? Is it an LLC? Is it an S Corp? Do you want to do a nonprofit? Think about those things. Are you going to be writing grants? If you're going to be writing grants, then you probably want to lean more toward being a nonprofit and a 501c3 versus being an S Corp or an LLC, because it's a little bit more difficult. You can get grants, but it's a little bit more difficult.
So helpful. Thank you for that.
And I'm sorry, I just want to draw down on one little point. What we found when we went through the COVID and there were the small business loans that you can get, a lot of people with small businesses were very frustrated because they weren't able to get into that queue to have access to those funds, and larger companies were able to. And that's because those companies have business accounts, and with those business accounts, you usually have someone from the bank that is your account manager versus having a personal account at the bank for your, just daily routine banking. So that's the differentiator when you're looking at starting your own company, starting your own business, having that relationship with the bank where your business account is. Because those people that had that were able to get through the application process a lot easier because they had an account manager at the bank that was tied to their business account.
We appreciate that very practical advice. And I'll just draw everyone's attention to Andrea's post in the chat that if you have questions, please don't wait until the end. We'll take those questions anytime.
So Dr. Seabrook, I'd like to, we're going to transition to a little bit talking about renewal and reinvention. But before we do that, I would love it if you would share the story, a story that I think illustrates not just the fact that you're a fantastic physician and a fantastic business person, but that you're frankly a really fantastic person, right? And I think this story, and I'll lead you to this, I think you'll know where I'm going. She's like, which story?
I know, right?
But look, I'm a marketing professor, right? And we know that it's all about the relationships you build with people. And I talked earlier about the relationships you have in the community. And you told us a story about a particular gentleman who lives in Genesis Towers in Gary, who you did something for because this is who you are, right? And you wouldn't, I don't think you did it because it was good for business, but it was. But it's a result of who you are. So would you mind sharing that story?
So back in the day, Dr. Seabrook used to do rounds at the hospital on patients that were admitted from Community HealthNet. I don't do that anymore, but I used to. So I would go and see you. If you were in the hospital, I would come and do my rounds. I would visit you, listen to your lungs, look at your medications, make sure you were getting the right nursing care that was needed. And so I had a patient in the hospital, know this gentleman very well. We were utilizing several programs to help him afford his medications. And so his medications were very valuable to him. They were like gold. And I have this thing about my patients. When they come in to their visits, everything is zip locked up. They come in, we go through medications to make sure they're not taking duplicate. You know, if they're seeing primary care and then they're seeing their cardiologist or their gastroenterologist, sometimes they'll, write the prescription, refill it, and not realize that they already have a refill. So sometimes they would have 2 bottles of the same medication, one in the name brand, one in generic. I'm like, this is the same medicine. So I'm going to pour this in one bottle. So he was in the hospital. I saw him, 2 or 3 day course in the hospital. And like any good patient, he brought his medications there. And instead of writing them down and saying, this is what I take, he brought a Ziploc bag. And so these were all of the inexpensive, some of them were free name brand medications that we had helped him get. And needless to say, I discharged him and he went home. He stayed in Genesis Towers. And he called me toward the end of the day and said, Dr. Seabrook, I can't take my afternoon medications. I said, why not? He said, because I left him at the hospital. I said, you did what? So I called back to the floor and the nurses were like, yes, Dr. Seabrook is here at the nurses station. I said, hold it, I'm coming. So I left, finished up clinic, went, picked up his medications, and I called him and I said, I'm coming to bring your medications. He said, you're bringing them? I said, yes, I'm bringing you these medications. We worked too hard to get you these medications. So I drove to Genesis Tower, went inside and said who I was there to see, signed in. And so I get up to his apartment, to the floor where his apartment is, and all of his neighbors are peeking out, and he has the door open and he says, I told you all she was coming. She said she was coming. That's my doctor. She said she was coming and she's here. So I sat down at his kitchen table with him and we chatted for a few minutes and made sure that he had everything else that he needed. And I told him when he would follow up with me in the office. But needless to say, after that, we had quite a few more patients from Genesis Towers.
And I think you told me from the hospital as well of staff who were incredibly impressed that you did this for a patient.
Yeah, the nurses got a kick out of that. They really did.
So, again, I think this is an example of who you are as a human that has, beyond your medical knowledge, beyond your business knowledge, has made you the success you are. It's about building relationships, and you obviously have a natural talent for that. So, let's talk a bit about that idea about caring for the whole person, because I know that you know, this was one story, but you also told us some other stories about, it's not just about healthcare, that your care for people, not only your patients, but the people you work for, it's about caring for their whole self, right? Including something that's important to me as a business professor and as a woman, about people's financial health, right? So you've talked to us about what you've done. You know, we know that many times people who are starting out, or people for a variety of reasons, kind of live on the edge, right? And you talked to us about some really important things that you do for your employees and your community, but also I think that are really good pieces of advice for those of us here in the audience. So if you don't mind sharing with us some of those things that you're doing from a financial perspective, a whole person perspective, that would be great.
So it's for me, it's not only or just about health care. And I tell people this all the time, especially staff, that health is central and key to everything else. If you don't have your health, and I tell people, think about a wheel, and it has a hub in the center, and that's your health. Everything else, finances, employment, the economy, you know, being able to go to work, being able to keep your home up and keep your grass cut, all of that is central and key. Health is in the center of all of that, because if you're sick, you can't go to work, you can't go to school, you can't keep your yard up, you can't do the things that you need to do, not only for yourself financially and economically, you can't do those things for your community. So you can't pay property taxes if you're steady, you know, in the hospital all the time. You have huge hospital bills that keep mounting, and having to file bankruptcy and the whole 9 yards. So I try to make people understand how important it is to continue to maintain your health and to stay healthy. I also push that with my staff, so much to the point where they probably think I'm a broken record. For years, I have wanted staff to be able to have not only bank accounts, because we have staff members that come to us without bank accounts. So then we had to find a bank that will work with us and do the second chance accounts for staff that had those financial issues. I talked to people about their credit score, you know, checking Credit Karma, making sure you're doing those moves that will help improve your credit score. I talked to people about saving for retirement, putting things away for a rainy day. So one of the things that I have been trying to do for years is to get people to save money that work here at Community HealthNet. And so what we did, and it took a while, had to do a lot of, you know, figuring out, again, sustainable, could we keep this up before we started it? But we started January 1st, 2020. We started a retirement plan for the entire staff, whether they wanted it or not, where 3% of every pay, 3% of their check, what they get, the health center takes that 3%, is our money, and we put it in their retirement account. So nothing comes from the staff at all. They can put money in it if they want, but Community HealthNet, if they've been here for a year, they are eligible to be a part of that plan. And every 2 weeks, when they get their check, 3% of whatever that amount is from Community HealthNet has been put into that retirement account. That is something that I have been trying to do for years, because when we would open up retirement accounts, only the providers, only the doctors and the nurse practitioners would participate, and never the medical assistants, never the frontline staff. And so I just really wanted to do something to change that. But I had to sit down and do a sustainability plan. Can we do this? Can we sustain this? Are we going to be able to finish what we started?
Huge. I love this story, and I love that I love the last thing you said, right? That this was not just for the providers, that you made sure that everybody who worked in your organization not only knew about the importance of it, but you put frankly, you put your money where your mouth was. So before we get to Q&A, I want to ask you one quick question. I want to remind everybody to keep putting their questions in on Facebook and here in Zoom. But I'm going to ask you one last question, because this is how sort of I'm feeling, and I'm guessing this is how Karen's feeling, and maybe some other people. Because we're hearing all these amazing things you do, I'm guessing you kind of maybe don't sleep. How do you take care of yourself?
Well, I like to, and some people who follow me on Facebook will know that, or either follow Community HealthNet. I like to cook. I like to cook. That relaxes me, especially if it's something that I'm trying to come up with a quick recipe. And sometimes things just pop in my head, and I'm like, I can make that, and I can make it healthy. So that's one of the things that I like to do. I like to crochet when I do have the time. That helps me relax as well, especially if it's not a pattern, if it's something that I'm coming up with out of my head. Because if it's a pattern, I'm trying to watch TV at the same time, that's not going to work. And I love to read. So right now, a friend of mine is trying to get me into the Audibles. So I have all of these Audible books downloaded, but then I have the same book stacked up on the shelf, the exact same book, and it's like, okay, read Audible. I'm not sure, I'm still up in the air with that. But those are some of the things that I like to do. And I love to garden. In the summertime, that's where I go. I can't wait to get home from work so I can go and get in my garden. So one of the things that we're doing, I'm so excited, is we're going to be starting a community garden at Community HealthNet. It's going to be down the street. This is a little bit premature, but I'm going to go ahead and say it anyway. We've partnered with Railcats, and they have parking lot that they have an old parking lot that they don't use. It has the lights already up. It's already fenced in. And so we have someone looking at it right now and drawing up the plans. And as soon as the snow melts, then we're going to start working on the designs and put together a community garden for our patients, but that neighborhood as well.
What a lovely way to transition into our Q&A. So Andrea and Stephanie, I think that this was the point at which you wanted to invite everybody to turn their cameras on so we can have a conversation, and Dr. Seabrook can see all the amazing people who are here. So if you are willing, we invite you to do that and join us and ask some questions of this amazing woman. And somebody put in, Dr. Seabrook, I'm going to embarrass you. Somebody put in chat that you're a regional treasure. So I'm sorry, but I thought it was a lovely comment. You're an amazing person, and hence why we wanted to feature you. But this is your chance to ask questions of Dr. Seabrook. What do you want to know about entrepreneurship, about the work that she's doing, about who she is?
So there's a great one from someone, and it says, Dr. Seabrook, how do you inspire those around you to move on your mission?
And so what I think has happened, because I will overhear staff or either someone who's new to the organization is maybe being interviewed by staff, and I hear them parroting words that I have said. And so I'm like, oh my God, they're listening, they're paying attention. So it's sort of like lead by example, but then also lead in the way that you want to be treated as well. So I think that's one of the things that keeps me going, that people are listening to me. So I need to make sure that I am doing the things that I need to do to keep not only myself uplifted, but to keep them uplifted as well.
Wonderful.
So here's another one that has come in. What do you wish somebody had told you that you know now that you wish somebody had told you a few years ago?
I think that patience, if someone had told me just, take your time, be patient, that things will come. when you're in the moment, sometimes you want those things to just happen right away, especially if you're somebody like me that likes to multitask. You know, you just want things to happen right away so you can move on to the next thing that you're juggling. So I would say patience.
That's great. So this one was posted maybe a while back, about 20 minutes or so ago. And it's for you, Dr. Seabrook, or anyone who's listening. Do you know of a collaborative with various resources for startups and existing businesses where folks can go to for some support and some help, like some of the tactical things, getting a business plan down on paper, that kind of stuff?
So I think it all depends on what you want to go into. So I would say for our area, the first place to maybe look at as a resource is 211, because you can look on 211 and see the various different resources that are in your community. But I think that it really has to do with whatever your passion is and whatever the job is going to be about. You can also look into things like a Small Business Association, to look at guidelines, to look at putting a business plan together. And you know, there's this thing called the internet, and there's so many things on there. And there are business plan templates that are out there, all types of things that you can go to and look for. So an example, I wanted to start a state-funded first and then a federally qualified health center. So we started with state funds, but put the model together as a federally qualified health center. So what did I do? I went to the federal government's website on federally qualified health centers and looked at all of the resources that were available for people who were looking to either be part of a federally qualified health center or start their own health center.
So that's so many good resources right out there, and Northwest Indiana Small Business Association and Small Business Development can also be super helpful. So I want to give them a shout out as well. We also got a really interesting, different kind of a question, and that was, it's sort of a two-parter. So I'll read both to you and let you answer them as you feel appropriate. And the question was, do you feel like you have found your purpose? And what advice would you give to someone else, someone out here who is trying to find their purpose?
I think that I have, but for me, that purpose is multifaceted, because of all of the passions that I have. Health being essential and making sure that others have the resources that they need to maintain their health. But for me personally, have I reached that? Yes, and on that facet, but then I believe on those other things, like with my crocheting, that leaves a little bit to be desired. I can't tell you how many half-finished projects I have all over my house that driving my husband nuts, but that's okay. He'll get over it because I cook very well for him, so he'll be okay. But one of the things that I didn't say, and I think that we have a resource that is here with us. Andrea is a resource. Her organization is filled with entrepreneurial women in business throughout Northwest Indiana. And I mean, you know, when I was selected for the influential woman in healthcare a few years ago, that network just opened up to me, and that is a resource that we have right here in the community. And look at this, that we're able to put this on and have so many people you know, just on and listening and finding out what they can do to fulfill their wish or their dream of starting their own business.
And so so joining a network is certainly crucial. And Andrea's organization, NWIIWA, of course, has been here in the community for quite some time. And for those of you who are not members, I'm going to put in a plug for NWIIWA. You should go to NWIIWA.org, right, Andrea, and join. So many opportunities. If I'm sort of struggling about, I don't know, this, that, I mean, how do I even figure out what path to go down? Because I'm interested in a lot of things.
So one of the things that I would say, and you know, I've said this before, what is your passion? What is something that you know you can carry through or believe that you can carry through to the finish line? One resource that we didn't talk about are local chambers of commerce. So joining those also helps to enhance your network as well. And you meet a lot of people through when we could have the in-person, and you get to see people that you sometimes don't normally get a chance to see on a routine or regular basis. And so those monthly, when they were in-person chamber meetings, can be very helpful too to build your network. But, you know, I would say, you know, you have to, is this passion sustainable? And if it is this something that I want to do and finish through to the finish line?
So I love this. And we have only a few more minutes, but I know that Andrea wants to close this out. But I just want to ask you one other question, and it goes back to something that you and Karen and I talked about, and it has to do with the Jetsons. For those of you who are old enough to remember this, it was one of our favorite shows. We all love this. But it has to do with where you find inspiration and innovation, right? And you know, I definitely took notes when you said that because I loved it as a kid. But can you kind of briefly close us with that, and then we'll turn it back over to Andrea?
So, you know, people were giving such pushback because we were quickly able to go to telehealth as COVID closed in and things were shut down. Doctors' offices, health centers went to telehealth, where you can, you know, get that medical visit, check in with your provider, get your refills and all of that stuff. And the funniest thing is we look at a lot of the things that we see.
I haven't talked to anybody.
A lot of the things that we see, actually, they aren't new. They are not new. So what would happen on the Jetsons? They would press the button on the TV monitor and the doctor would come on. And then right behind the monitor, there was that little machine they would not walk through, they would just stand there on the runway and they would come through and you would see the outline of the x-ray or whatever, and they would get to the end, come back and stand in front of the screen, and the doctor would tell them what was going on with them. If they needed a prescription, it would just pop out, you know. So I'm like, we have these things, and we talked about Star Trek and the flip phone. And, you know, now we have so much technology in our hands right now. So, I mean, the future is just, you know, all over the place as far as with technology. The sky is really and truly the limit.
So inspiration comes from all over, even from a 60s and 70s TV show, right? So
Exactly.
Dr. Seabrook, on behalf of Karen and I and Andrea, we want to thank you so much for all that you've shared. Andrea has several things. Please don't leave. Please stay for a few minutes. Andrea has a few things to share. But, you know, thank you from the bottom of our hearts for all of your inspiration and ideas and someone to look up to and to seek to be.
Thank you so much for that. And there's one other organization that I'm a part of, and that's here in Northwest Indiana. And it's an organization of diverse women in business. And so that's also a resource because that's my network. Also, that's my support. And there are several people who are on this call that are here in support of me that participate in the DWBI. So I want to say thank you to my sisters in that organization as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you to all three of you. And, you know, there are so many organizations, and it is sometimes a little nerve-wracking for people to reach out to others. In NWIIWA, there are so many of us. Please reach out to us. Don't be nervous. If you want to email us, don't be nervous. We're here to help. I had to ask a question today of one of my mentors, my best friends, because I didn't know what to do. You know, I mean, there are different stages you need to ask questions. So we're here to help. And I do want to clarify that NWIIWA, you guys are so kind about NWIIWA. Thank you very much. It is not my organization. It's just the organization that the board of directors put together, and they pointed to me to help coordinate the efforts and the events. So it's really a grassroots program. So really quickly, I need 60 seconds of your time. You know, it follows us on social media. We do lots on social media. It's how we communicate because our inboxes get filled with emails and junk. So please follow us on social media, both on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn, and of course YouTube. Our influential women. Thank goodness we are going to be back in the saddle. Our 10th annual Influential Women Awards Banquet is September 30th. We have over 800 people that attend this event, and I think Dr. Seabrook gave me her personal guarantee that everyone will be vaccinated and ready to go by September 30th, because I expect you there too, Dr. Seabrook. We have our Coffee and Connect coming up. This is just a quick little way to meet and stay connected with people. It is virtual. It is Thursday, February 16th at 8:30. And we'll have small little breakout rooms, and you can register at NWIIWA.org. Our next empowerment program. This is really interesting. Kara Herring is Indiana's first ever Chief Equity, Inclusion, and Opportunity Officer. And she is giving us her very first virtual program, and she has lots to say. So we're excited about that. Her title is going to be When Women Unite, Intersectionally, Allyship, and Purposeful Connection in the Workplace and Beyond. Our next Breaking the Glass Ceiling, Lieutenant Governor Suzanne Crouch is going to be with us. Yay! She was one of the first to sign up for Breaking the Glass Ceiling, but her schedule wouldn't allow us to join until March. And that's just going to be really interesting. So please register for that as well. And then we have lots of other programs. Get involved. If you want something out of something, you have to reach out. You have to get involved. We just don't come to you with a gift and place it on your front porch. So get involved and be involved in one of our committees that we have, and come to more of our programs, and let us all rise together as a tribe. So thank you for attending. Dr. Seabrook, I expect out of the garden a nice dinner and a glass of wine from you. Lori and Karen, you're always just so fabulous. Thank you to everyone, and we'll see you at our next program.
Thank you.